It is Friday, December 8th. Let's talk PlayStation. Welcome back, everyone, to another ceremonial episode of LTPS. It's been a very busy week. There's a lot going on. Also, last night was the Game Awards, so we have a lot to go over. But first, a very brief announcement. I apologize for not uploading 30 Platinums Part 3 on Wednesday, so I did need a little bit more time to fix that up. But now I think I can safely say that it will be uploaded tomorrow, Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I cannot wait to finally have that out there, which I will be hanging out in the comments, talking with you all and responding, and because I can't wait to finally have that done. And also, just a little PSA, it's probably not going to be this thumbnail, so I just made that for fun. It will probably be something else that's a bit more, YouTuber-y, same with the title. I just have to worry about that stuff for click-through rate, but otherwise it will go live tomorrow, so I do hope you all check it out. Now, with that said, let's begin, as always, with our PS Plus reminder. If you have not just yet claimed those December PS Plus Essential games, they are live on PSN. Also, in other PS Plus news, Sony announced a new promotion called the Season of Play, which runs from now until January 5th, and they're doing a bunch of free goodies and giveaways. So there's free PSN avatars on the Season of Play page on your console. No plus required. You can just claim those. There's also a coupon code for 15% off the PlayStation Gear Store. There's a free PS5 giveaway they're doing for, I believe it's a digital edition, and then 1 year of PS Plus Premium. You can find the details on the PS blog. There's a free multiplayer weekend that starts tomorrow. There is bonus points for a PlayStation Stars campaign. And most notably, there is a new perk for PlayStation Plus Premium members. If you remember, there was a new perk for the Sony Pictures Core app on PlayStation 5, where there's a catalog of about 100 movies that you can watch for free without buying anything separately. So if you have Premium, you can just start watching those movies. But now there is a very small selection of Crunchyroll content added on there, again for free for Premium members. Right now, there's only Log Horizon, Radiant, 86, Welcome to Demon School, and also To Your Eternity. And it's only available right now in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, but it should roll out to more countries soon enough. I'll tell you though, for the longest time, when it came to, well, especially Sony acquiring Crunchyroll, it was always something where everyone was like, they should do some kind of, free tie-in. Well, a lot of people were hoping like, oh, just a free Crunchyroll subscription. Don't think that's going to happen, although that would be nice. But it was always a matter of like, they should do some kind of, collaboration there, or some sort of perk relating to anime. The audience has some very obvious crossover there with, somebody that watches anime versus also owning a PlayStation. So there we go. We finally have it. It's not a lot, but given the PS Plus pricing, it seems like any sort of little minor new perk is welcomed. So at least they have it now. It seems like it might be a pilot program, and maybe we will see more over time. One other PS Plus news item is that for PS Plus Premium, we have another game rated in Taiwan, spotted by Gamatsu, and that is Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace for PlayStation 1. So yet again, more Disney support. It's really Disney and LucasArts that are standing PS Plus Premium and allowing this to happen. So I would love a lot more than just Disney, but if you had a childhood where you enjoyed a lot of Disney properties on PlayStation 1 or PSP, you are eating right now. Moving on to our next news story, we have a new PS5 system software update. This one was 23.02, 8.40, and this one has 3 changelog items, which are not just improving stability, which they did do, not just improving the messages and usability on some screens, never all, but they've also added new security fixes to the system software as well. Now, this firmware is not mandatory. You don't have to download it right now, which makes me think it's not related to the one big problem Sony had recently, which I'm sure a lot of you probably saw or at least heard about this, or maybe it happened to you, but on Monday night, a mass amount of PSN accounts were banned for seemingly no reason. Not something where people, complaining on Reddit, Reset Era, or X or whatever, write about, oh, my account was banned, and it's like, okay, what did you do? No, genuinely, it seems like there was a large amount of users that were banned immediately, oftentimes without an email explaining what happened. Now, there's theories about what went wrong here, considering it's very likely some kind of weird Sony backend issue, because it only took about 24 hours the following day for most of those accounts. And I say most as in it seems like from everything you can spot online, most users probably did get their account back trying to log back in, because when this did happen, PlayStation support was flooded with responses, and it's very much an unusual thing because you've got all these accounts that are in good standing. PSN also operates on a 3 punishment system. You get 1 suspension, 2, and then you're banned. So this was very weird. And what's frustrating is that we are in a very digital future. So if this happens, you're in a position where you are now locked out of all your content. And for some users, they're, dedicated PlayStation customers that have been playing since PS3, PS4, where a lot of that content is still playable on PlayStation 5. So you're locked out of, potentially hundreds, thousands of dollars worth of goods with no explanation why. We still don't know why or what happened. And considering this is such an uncommon occurrence, I think it would at the very least sort of warrant not only an explanation, which is the bare minimum, but also some kind of goodwill gesture for, what is kind of an anxiety-ridden sort of experience to have this happen to you, right? So whether that's a small little PSN credit or a free month of PS Plus, just say something and perhaps offer something. Really weird and disappointing that we still don't really know why this happened. It really was a lot of people that this happened to in a very unusual way, and Sony thus far has not said anything. We'll keep watching this and see if anything new comes up in terms of explanations. Now, the other big issue this week relating to digital content is that Sony sent out an email letting users know that if you purchased any Discovery content on PSN back when they offered this on PS3 and PS4, then they are going to have to delist that content even though you purchased it. Not so much a subscription thing. If you bought any sort of TV show, a season of a TV show, I think there is movies on there, but it's a laundry list. It's hundreds of seasons and TV shows that are being delisted from PlayStation Network, so you will no longer be able to watch those due to what Sony says is content licensing agreements. So that was a very big deal, considering this is more a matter of you bought the content. It's not subscription, where that tends to happen quite often, where content will get pulled from one subscription service, go on to another. Those deals change pretty often in terms of turnover. Some are long-term, but some are on the short-term side. But in this case, it is long-term, and it seems like whatever sort of arrangement they had is almost up. Or this may also be the consequence of Discovery merging with Warner Brothers recently. And we've seen that Discovery, that's something where they're really pulling content everywhere and keeping that stuff closer to them. So very likely it's just a matter of not only that, but also it's not like if Sony had the option to renew the content. I highly doubt that is something they would want to do. Sure, that's the right thing to do, but we're talking about a program that Sony has long since retired. They're only offering this stuff, as a streaming thing on PSN where you can still access it that way from the PlayStation Video app. It's very much a compliance sort of thing because they don't sell TV and movie on PSN anymore, right? They stopped doing that. So likely both of those things at play here, and that's why this stuff is all going away. The problem, though, primarily, we need better legislation. We need laws in place that really protect consumer rights when it comes to how much stuff is digital nowadays, right? So we can avoid something like this, because every single time for any sort of service, whether it's hardware, whatever platform you're on, every single terms of service, it's always they are licensing it to you. And this is legally okay to happen every single time it does happen. That's the problem with the digital landscape. Obviously, I'm a physical media advocate, but I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo people and say, hey, I was right and all that. I would love to have a sort of physical media renaissance here, but the convenience does make sense for a lot of folks. I just wish there were better protections in place for when you buy something, when you pay money, and you should have access to it for the foreseeable future, which is going to lead many people to, other avenues that may or may not be considered unsavory. But that's what you have to do when you pay for something and you want to have access to it. But on paper, the terms of service always says that you are licensed that content, and this can happen, unfortunately. Now, if there's one thing I am not a fan of, it's when we do LTPS and then one of our headline news stories very quickly becomes outdated by something that comes out on Friday, and that was our Xbox Game Pass story last week, where recently, rather on Friday, I should say, the Microsoft Gaming CEO, Phil Spencer, was speaking with Windows Central, and he was asked about their CFO, Tim Stewart, regarding the answer he gave during the Wells Fargo presentation about the strategy changing with Game Pass on all screens, including competing platforms. Phil said, and I quote here, "I'll start by saying we have no plans to bring Game Pass to PlayStation or Nintendo. It's not in our plans. But I think you hit on the right point of what it means to own an Xbox. The thing I want to be focused on is how do we continue to innovate for people who have made the commitment to our hardware platform? How do we continue to make sure that they feel great about their investment in what we've built?" So now we have Phil giving the exact opposite answer to this topic, and so what's going on here? Now, I'm inclined to say that far be it for me to sort of like make that accusation. It's not even so much an accusation, but you've got a public interview that's meant to be public, very directed towards the audience that found out about the news from the CFO that was speaking during an investor meeting at the Wells Fargo summit. You know, that's a kind of audience that, in theory, maybe Tim just made a slight mistake there and, you know, didn't think it would really go beyond that or whatever. It's not like the CFO is not a high enough senior position to be in the know about Microsoft's plans, or rather at least what they would like to do if it were possible. And we also already have a proof that they absolutely have tried to some degree to make this happen. So I think what you've got here is more a matter of Phil maybe trying to control the messaging a bit, given that it was one day later, but that was still an interview that was very likely planned, you know, well before the Wells Fargo thing, although Jez Corden had a chance to throw that in last minute, I would presume, based on the news that did go out publicly. But it just seems like a very convenient time for Phil to, again, for what is meant to be a public interview, control the messaging and the dialogue around Game Pass being on PlayStation or Nintendo, or their box making it seem like, you know, the Xbox platform is destined to not be in hardware anymore, right? So it is within Phil's interest to sort of get that message out there, although I think it's still a very safe thing to say that if they could get it done, which would be getting Game Pass on Nintendo or PlayStation, I think they would like to do that, right? So them saying no plans, I mean, that's fine. That is Phil's sort of definitive answer on the topic, but I'm sure they would still like to arrange something if it were possible. Next up, we have some new details for the no-return roguelike mode for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered for PlayStation 5, where Sony sent out a brand new trailer showcasing the different combat scenarios, the playable characters, a good amount of gameplay modifiers, but more importantly, there's various outlets that had some hands-on time with it as well, so we know a little bit more about how the game mode is going to play out, which it does primarily start off at the hideout, where you can make your upgrades in between your runs, and also choose the path for the combat scenarios you want to take on. Initially, you start off with Ellie or Abby, which both have unique starting buffs, but you can unlock new characters by finishing runs with them. They branch off with Ellie unlocking Dina or Abby unlocking Lev. The different scenarios that'll play out, it's not just taking out waves of enemies, so it could be that, but you could also have to survive until a timer runs out, or trying to unlock a well-guarded safe in time, or you start off with them knowing where you are versus being able to hunt them out individually. And in total, we know there's 19 different maps and 6 different boss encounters. And there's also new trophies for the mode as well, and apparently it is very much challenging. So it's just it's weird, this is going to be a theme in a second here or later on in the show, but roguelike modes, I love them. They're just so fun, and I think for The Last of Us Part 2, I think it could adapt to that very well. So it's really, this is like the one really cool thing about the Part 2 remaster, outside of just, another standard native PS5 release with haptics triggers and, increased frame rates. That's all well and good. Or the high frame rate mode, I should say, because we already have the patch on the PS4 version, but this does seem genuinely exciting. Now, in other The Last of Us news, we also have the Tommy voice actor, Jeffrey Pierce, recently speaking with Dexerto, and this is where he gave a comment on the possibility of The Last of Us Part 3, where he says, and I quote here, "At this point, it's not something that has begun in any fashion, at least not that I know of, and I would hate to set myself up to have the expectation about what it would be, and then have it be something completely different. I'm going to trust when Neil hands me a script that it's going to be perfect because that's the way it's been up until now. And when that happens and I'm asked about The Last of Us Part 3, I have to say I have no idea what you're talking about. So it's not really news here per se. I mean, one could interpret this as this being more evidence that we are getting a new IP versus The Last of Us Part 3, but as Jeffrey plainly points out, he does seem like he's being genuine in that, oh, I don't have a script for Part 3, so therefore, it hasn't begun in any meaningful way. That should be happening right about now, although in theory, if Naughty Dog is, starting pre-production on Part 3 while this other new IP is well into production, it could be something where maybe he's talking about that, where he fully expects it is going to happen at some point, and I think that is a safe bet that we'll eventually get that game, but maybe he's sort of putting that out there before he does eventually get the script, where then very much, if you are involved in that kind of project, you can't say anything about it and you have to start being very tight-lipped. So there's not really much here to go on, but still thought it was worth bringing up. All right, let's move on to Jeff Keighley's The Game Awards, which were last night, and as they often are, very long. There's way too much that we can talk about, but we'll do sort of a highlight reel, if you will, of some of the more noteworthy things before getting to the PlayStation announcements, because as we often say, if it is a Jeff Keighley show, Sony does tend to bring one or two things, and that very much was the case this year again. But some of the things that stood out to me, at least initially, was that Mark Cerny was in the house. I'm not sure if he was there before, but for the PS4, Vita, and PS5 system architect, he does very few public appearances, so it was very cool to see Mark Cerny there. Also, Christopher Judge, the Kratos voice actor. Of course, there were jokes about, how long he was going to be on stage, but what was hilarious was he said his 8-minute speech from last year was longer than this year's Call of Duty campaign as a knock towards that game. That was hilarious. My jaw was on the floor. I was laughing for like 4 or 5 minutes straight. I could not believe he actually said that on stage. That was awesome. But anyway, Matthew McConaughey, he was there. He's voicing in a new sci-fi RPG called Exodus from Archetype Entertainment, so that was really kind of a left field thing. We also got a new trailer for Metaphor ReFantazio, and that game looks ridiculous, so nice to see that game's coming along just fine. Ikumi Nakamura, she announced her studio's first game, which is Kimuri. Apparently they still don't have a target platform or publisher, but it was really cool to finally see her studio Unseen finally debut that title. It looks very cool. Sega announced in one trailer a new Jet Set Radio, Shinobi, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, and Crazy Taxi, all in development. It was a very brief sort of like, hey, we're doing these 5 things, which we already kind of knew about a lot of these, but at least there was a formal acknowledgement there. We got a trailer for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. That's the official name for the Budokai Tenkaichi game, the new one. Square announced a new Mana game, Visions of Mana, coming 2024, so I think there's a lot of people out there that were very happy about that. Hideo Kojima, I mean, he was gonna be here. It was more a matter of, is it going to be Death Stranding 2 or the Overdose Project? It was Overdose, so it got a formal reveal only being referred to as OD, and that is the Xbox Game Studios cloud title that he's been doing, which Jordan Peele is also involved in that project. I kind of, oh my god, I don't know how to feel about that, but it's kind of a good thing. I want to see more of that project as well, so that was still very cool to see. A new AAA Jurassic Park game was also announced. I think that could go in a good direction, depending on the quality. Shuhei Yoshida got to accept an award for Chia on behalf of the studio, winning the Games for Impact Award, which that was really cool to see not only Shuhei on stage, but more importantly, the dev team did share a little video on X with their reaction. Always like a heartwarming thing to see that. We got a live performance for the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth theme. Arcane Leon announced Marvel's Blade. Now, that is an Xbox Game Studios game, obviously, because it's Arcane Leon, but that was also awesome as well. So now Xbox has a Marvel property, and Blade is a really cool IP. So that, especially with Arcane Leon, I think they could absolutely nail that property in particular. So that just seems almost like a match made in heaven. So I at least personally will be watching that. Anthony Mackie presented an award and confirmed Twisted Metal is getting a season 2 on Peacock. So that is good to see for those Twisted Metal fans. And I think we heard about that like a day before or something from, I think it was Variety, but yeah, that's confirmed. The Last of Us HBO won Best Adaptation. Well-deserved there. Sean Murray introduced Hello Games' new IP, a multiplayer procedural, I think it's a survival experience that's called Light No Fire. So Hello Games finally doing a new IP after supporting No Man's Sky for how long? A new Monster Hunter was announced, so we also finally have the next entry there, Monster Hunter Wilds, coming 2025. And in terms of awards, Alan Wake 2 and Baldur's Gate 3 took home a lot of them, with Baldur's Gate 3 getting the Game of the Year win. Well deserved, and huge congrats to Larian. Now, I'll tell you, this was a mostly enjoyable show in that the reveals were, I mean, Jeff had a lot of really big reveals, so kudos there for getting some big ones for this time around. And that's like always the funny thing with, I guess, some that like to complain that, oh, it's not really an award ceremony, it's mostly trailers, it's all commercialized. But it's like, okay, well, that's why you're watching. For a lot of people, you know, the BAFTAs, which is purely a Game Awards ceremony with the acceptance speeches and all that, I mean, hardly anybody watches that live stream when it happens, right? So that always struck me as a very weird criticism. The trailers and all that, it's fine, and they do run on a tight schedule with the venue, so I get why they want to, you know, move it along, and so that doesn't really bother me, but really the big issue this year, without a doubt, was that it seems like they were really pushing it with, you know, the developers and their on-stage time with accepting awards. So that was released immediately from those at the event, was that big prompter that said, please wrap it up, which is insane. I really hope that's not a consequence of Christopher Judge last year spending 8 minutes doing his thing. But like those moments are very special, and it's cool when they happen, and they should happen for all those developers. But it's a time management thing, right? Like the trailers, they're gonna be there. I think they're fine. You know, the awards have to have their place, obviously, but why are we doing so many like jokes and monologues and, you know, celebrities that show up, and like, why are they there? Why are they making these cringy jokes that either aren't landing or let's get those out. I'm fine with the trailers. I really am. That's why people watch, even though they don't want to admit that seemingly. But this was just like, I think the time management, they really have to reconsider what should be getting stage time instead of putting these big names up there that are just going to do some sort of lame monologue for 5 minutes and it goes absolutely nowhere, but a developer gets, 30 to 45 seconds. It's disappointing. That I did not like at all. But now, let's get into the PlayStation announcements. Because PlayStation Studios, God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, a free DLC which is a roguelike mode coming December 12th. Only a few days away, less than a week. That's going to be an epilogue to the events of Ragnarok, where Kratos is brought to the shores of Valhalla. There's 5 difficulty settings that you can change in between attempts. Kratos will have access to all his weapons and fully upgraded skill trees, but as you progress, you can also choose temporary glyphs for stat upgrades and also runic attacks. We also learn that you can play at any time, regardless of story progress, but Santa Monica does recommend that you play the story or finish out the story first before jumping into the Valhalla DLC. Now, we also found out that Ragnarok has sold through 15 million copies across PS4 and PS5 on the PlayStation blog, which that's also a massive milestone, so congrats to Santa Monica for that. That game was surely going to keep selling, so that's a big milestone for sure. But yeah, everything was roguelike. It's a wonderful thing. I think it's great. We're seeing so many different genres, you know, try out this subgenre as a secondary mode or add-on or whatever the case is. I am all here for it because I think it is so adaptable. You know, like The Last of Us Part 2 makes sense, but this one even more so because, I mean, Ragnarok, I always consider like 2018 God of War and this one sort of a whole package deal, not to like gush over how great it is, but it's the kind of thing where like if you don't care about story, this is still a video game, a very video gamey gameplay heavy game, right? You can get off crazy combos and it can be very challenging, and so it is a joy to play in that department, right? It's a lot of fun with the combat. So it's like begging for something like this. So I think it will adapt very well with Ragnarök. So, and also it's like, it's so fun to have something like, hey, it's coming out very soon, or it's available right now. So as a free update, and considering we also heard that there was maybe new content coming for Ragnarök, we just didn't know if it was going to be standalone or if it would be paid DLC or something. This was a very welcomed sort of, you know, in-between surprise of what we were thinking it might have been. Now, another PlayStation Studios announcement, which this can now be considered one, is Rise of the Ronin, which got a new gameplay trailer, story trailer, and also a confirmed release date of March 22nd, 2024. So that's actually very soon. It's not far away at all, and that means in terms of Q1, there's actually quite a bit coming up now, especially if you consider like console exclusives for PS5. So that would be Grand Blue, Pacific Drive, Helldivers 2, Rebirth, and now this in March. I think there's a lot to be excited for, but yeah, that was also noteworthy, is that this had the PS Studios splash screen. Before, it would be Sony Interactive Entertainment Presents. So it seems like now they just might be throwing this on any sort of game that they have locked down in perpetuity, because presumably this means, you know, in terms of the publishing agreement for just this game, right? Because they don't own the IP. That did not change. The trademark info down below still showed on that trailer that Koei Tecmo owns it, but SIE is publishing. So if they're willing to put the PS Studios logo on this trailer, unless it was just an oversight, that would mean that for sure this game is locked down in perpetuity and it's not going anywhere unless, possibly it would, like a PC release would not be a problem. They would still use the PS Studios logo in that case, like with, say, Death Stranding. But I know we're really being a stickler about this, but it's important to understand, what does Sony consider a PlayStation Studios game when that changed from Worldwide Studios to PS Studios, where that now included external developers that were working on PlayStation properties. But now it seems like they will use that logo, assumingly on third-party publishing agreements as well that are likely not going to ship on other platforms, other competing console platforms. Now, moving on, this was hinted at just a few days prior to the show, but now it's confirmed. 2 paid DLC expansions are coming for Final Fantasy XVI. We got a trailer showing off. The first one, Echoes of the Fallen, it was shadow dropped immediately, so it is available right now. It's about these new dark crystals on the black market that leads the party to a mysterious tower, and you can access this right before the final battle of the base game. That's all the info we know right now, at least, but it should be out, so you can start playing it immediately. And then also the Rising Tides, that's coming spring 2024. That will be about Clive having a confrontation with the icon Leviathan. And there will be an expansion pass that you can buy for both at a discounted price. But that's great to see. I mean, I love this game. It's a lot of fun. And so my only thing is I was hoping the DLC that they were planning on doing would have been about Clive's time with the Bastards when he was still, that is the name of it if you haven't played the game, but when he was still like a slave, essentially. I think that would have been a very interesting thing to explore, and maybe there is some of that coming in the later expansion or in the expansion that I have obviously not played yet, but still nice to see that we had a shadow drop for that come out, and that also means they were very likely working on some of this content either in tandem with the base game, or they were immediately working on this stuff right after being a little bit coy about, maybe we'll work on DLC, or very likely you are doing it, and it's going to happen either way. Now, in terms of the Game Awards, that's about all we got from PlayStation. I really thought Death Stranding 2 was going to be there, but, either way, the sort of same level of presence was there, which was Sony would probably bring 2 or 3 things, and that is exactly what happened. So now we wait until CES, which that has been more of a PlayStation show nowadays, considering it eats up such a large portion of the entire Sony group's, they make the most, right? So you kind of can't talk about PlayStation at CES these days, which means we don't have to wait too long to hear about something for PlayStation. It might not be a game announcement, but maybe some kind of business-related announcement at CES. But the other really big story that came out this week was about Bungie, because there is some turmoil going on based on a new report from IGN. So what happened here was they really detailed a number of things going on where Bungie, as we know, is an independent subsidiary. As we've explained before, they're not technically a controlled PlayStation Studios developer, but the board is split with those from Bungie and those from Sony, and apparently former and current employees speaking with IGN under anonymity say this might change if Bungie does not turn their fortunes around. Because apparently the acquisition did have a contingency that if Bungie doesn't meet certain financial thresholds, then Sony is allowed to dissolve the board and take control of the company. So this is why Bungie themselves laid off about 100 staff last month, and since then, apparently they've done a lot of cost-cutting measures, like a hiring freeze, reduced travel costs, elimination of holiday bonuses, reducing morale events like cooking and knitting classes, pausing and ending certain annual compensation adjustments, donation matching, gift cards for employee birthdays. Even worse, there was an apparent Q&A session where a department head was asked if salary cuts were considered for leadership as a way to prevent the layoffs, and the response was that Bungie was, quote, not that type of company. So all this has led to an all-time low for the studio morale, and leadership is apparently indifferent towards all of this, saying that layoffs will be another lever that they may have to pull again. So a lot is riding on the final shape to do well, and this has been really eye-opening in a way where it seems to highlight more and more that there has been a lot of problems with Bungie leadership and Bungie management for the entire studio, and also their plans for the game's, the in-game economy, right? I don't play Destiny, but it's something where I've been watching a lot of the fan feedback, and it really is fascinating to see, because you would think that, I guess, based on the phrasing, normally how this stuff would go, it sounds kind of like a bad thing that, oh, Sony could be taking over the company, but it's really been surprising to see hardcore fans kind of be like, after you guys left Activision, it really highlights that maybe you were more the problem than Activision, and maybe it's a good thing that Sony would take over the company and properly manage the studio better. But there's also the matter of, the kind of money they put into Bungie, and maybe they're not nearly on the up and up as they were hoping they would be. Or it's a really loaded topic that is, all sort of hinging on I don't want to say hearsay. It seems like there certainly are a lot of problems at Bungie. That much is obvious, but there's not much I can really add to the dialogue here. I think Sony can. I mean, if they have to, they certainly will. The contingency does make sense that would be part of the acquisition. If you want to remain independent, then as long as you're meeting those financial goals, then you can keep your autonomy. But if they're not doing that, then you do have to step in and manage them yourself. So I'm curious as to what would happen if Sony did have to eventually do that. We might look at a very different Bungie in a way that some are considering a good thing. I don't really know what direction that would go. I would presume it would be good. Sony does generally have a good track record with studio management. But live service is a very new thing for them, right? So that, I think, would also be very uncertain and not exactly a surefire thing. Now, this was also a very big week for anybody that is not yet deceased, because there's no chance that you have not heard about Grand Theft Auto 6. We finally have a trailer after what was a bit of a turbulent run-up there. So the trailer leaked. Rockstar said, okay, put it out officially. The trailer expectedly is like the most viewed video game trailer ever already, at 100+ million views across all these different uploads, but official Rockstar channels. The numbers are ridiculous. This franchise is so big, it is insane. Confirmed for only PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S, X, no PC, which I feel like is not surprising. This is how they've done it every single time now. So that's been kind of a big thing in the PC community, is that they were hoping a day-and-date PC launch this time around. Doesn't seem like that's happening, but no last-gen consoles is really great news that we have a bare minimum with current-gen platforms. With Series S, being that lowest common denominator, but that is plenty for, I think, what is going to be a great experience. And I think what's, the jumping off point we can talk about here with PlayStation is that, next year we are potentially getting a PlayStation 5 Pro. Based on the reporting that we've got, it seems like there's been solid sources from primarily Tom Henderson, which has been right about all this other various PlayStation hardware, that we should be expecting PS5 Pro. The game is coming out 2025, so this game will more than likely ship with a PlayStation 5 Pro setting. And if Microsoft is not shipping a mid-gen update with the Series consoles, which it seems like that is not on the table for them based on, the confidential info we found out about the company, PlayStation may very well, not just off sheer install base, but also having a Pro option, may be the way to play and enjoy Grand Theft Auto 6, which, inadvertently, I think for Sony is like one of the best positions you can possibly be in, right? As if they weren't already doing so well. But as a fan of Grand Theft Auto, I'm very happy with that trailer. It is so Florida and so Grand Theft Auto at the same time, and I had a lot of faith in Rockstar. I think they're going to pull off something special. Moving on to our next news story, something that happened one night before the Game Awards was a going away party for Jim Ryan. I am not joking. There was a thank you Jim party in Japan, which was, we found out from an employee. Yuichi shared this on X, where we saw that at the going away party, Jim Ryan is getting a one-of-a-kind PS1 style PlayStation 5, a digital edition, I might add, but it does look unbelievably amazing. Oh my god, I wish they would make and sell that console like the 20th anniversary PS4. It looks gorgeous. Even the DualSense, I'll take that. It looks amazing with the colored PlayStation logo. But also, Jim Ryan cookies. My god, I bet that thing is very dry. But Jim Ryan's face on a cookie. Okay, sure. That was funny to see. But hey, he is retiring, so it makes sense that they would have some sort of commemorative party, And Jim is that's one way to go out, an exclusive PS1 style to PS5 for somebody that's been there since the very beginning, and also a cookie to boot. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or X, and if you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very simple. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week, because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are all the stories from this past week that I wanted to talk about with you all, and our Monday video was unboxing a new PlayStation 4, almost new, but it's one I bought in 2013 and kept in the box for most of its life. We set that console up, throw it into the display cabinet. That's all I've got right now for like brand new in-box PlayStation hardware. I'll probably do more later next year or something, but for now that's it. And I wanted to do 30 Platinums on Wednesday, but again, as a reminder, that is coming tomorrow, 1 p.m. I will be hanging out and watching those comments and responding. I can't wait to hear what you all think about that crazy upload. But that we'll still also probably have an upload on Tuesday, and that should still be released just fine. But we will have one tomorrow. 30 Platinums Part 3. Get hyped. That is it, though. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.